What's up, people? Nature Girl 30 here, and not only is this another mini Q&A, this is also the month of March. So much going on in the month of March. Not only my birthday month, but also WrestleMania 32. I don't know about you guys, but I'm excited about this. Seriously, it's like Christmas. WrestleMania every year to me is like Christmas. And yes, I'm not gonna lie, the product has been somewhat subpar. But I will say the WrestleMania 32 is starting to square up to be a pretty decent WrestleMania. I was worried about it, but it seems to me that something good is going to come out of this. I really believe it will be. But guys, enough about that. This is a mini Q&A. You guys have questions that you have sent me, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. And I actually do have a few Twitter questions from 3 individuals, so I will get started on those first. The first person off Twitter will be Largest85. Your question for me is this. And actually, you've had a lot of questions about mixed races and dating outside your race. And you've had 3 questions about that, so I'm going to get those knocked off first. The only thing I can say about that is try it for yourself. If you haven't dated anybody outside your race, then try it. You'll be able to experience it, and you'll pretty much get the feeling firsthand. Because it's difficult for me to explain how it is because, well, I've experienced it, but you haven't. So, or unless you have or not, I don't know. But yeah, just go and experience for yourself. Because it's just funny how you just kind of phrase it as race mixing. Like it's some kind of a toxic drug. All I can say is even though people are from different races, different cultures, we all have blood underneath. We're all pink underneath. That's the same color. So all I can say about it is this. Go try it for yourself. And if I've done it, I've already explained it like way back that I have dated outside my race. So that answers that question there. As for Nintendo Fanboy 1988, if he has a question for me on why I didn't answer his questions last time, have him send me a line. I will definitely answer his questions. I understand he's your friend and all, but he can come to me. And I will respect him if he... I mean, I do respect all of the people that do send me these questions. But I would say if he does have something for me or a question for me on why I didn't answer him, he can just send them to me straight up. And I'll let him know. But that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all the questions that you did send me. Oh yeah, and here you go. The last question, I'll just go ahead and read this out. Thoughts on African Americans saying the Oscars are racist. Okay. I'm going to say this. When you haven't been given the opportunity as the same as your counterparts, and this has gone on for many years, yeah, it's kind of unfair. But like Chris Rock pointed out in the Oscars has been around for a very long time. So this really isn't the first time it happened. So this has been a reoccurring thing for many years, for pretty much close to maybe I don't want to say a century, but I will say it's a very long time this has been going on. But honestly, I'm not going to say it's racist. Because I do believe that people use that term out of context. People actually use the definition of racism out of context. I believe it's more prejudice to anything else, but not racist. But other than that, for the Oscars themselves, nobody really cared about it anymore. It's a topic that we all want to move on. I mean, speaking for myself, really. But for the fact that people believe it's racist, it's not racist, it's just prejudice. And they do have a right to feel that way because they feel like they've been snubbed. And a lot of good African-American movies have been snubbed this year. But it is what it is. Because honestly, what happens after everybody that wins an Oscar? Nothing much. They either dwindle out of existence, or they have to struggle at that same standard, above that same standard, and it's a standard that they can't reach. So in a way, for those that weren't nominated, or for those that didn't get it, I consider that to be a blessing. That's just me, because that means they'll still be around for a while. So I'm kind of happy that Will Smith didn't get it, because if he did, we wouldn't see Will Smith at all next year. That's just me. I mean, look what happened to a lot of these people that have won Oscars. Have we seen them lately? No. They've kind of vanished off the face of the planet. But that's just me. But anyway, moving on to my next set of questions coming from Real Harold. Dude, I haven't heard from you in a while. It's kind of cool to actually see you on here again. So I actually am really happy to see you sending me questions. And awesome, man. This is your first question for me. What does Nature Girl 30 think of nostalgic people who only brings up 80s or 90s, 80s and or 90s all the time? Me being an 80s girl, well, I was an 80s baby and a 90s child. Actually, no. I was an 80s baby, 80s child, and 90s teen. But like I said, well, not like I said, but when it comes to people that are bringing up 80s and 90s, it's starting to become a trend to be nostalgic. Because let's be honest, when it comes to millennials, they really don't have any history to fall back on. They literally are in the future. If not, kind of sort of in the future. I mean, we don't have flying cars or anything. But I will say that they don't have any history to fall back on. They don't have anything to reminisce. I'm blessed that I do. And a lot of people want to know what happened back then. And the 80s is as close enough as you can get to technology. We're able to go back and see videos from the 80s and 90s. And see how we feel about them. And what we thought was cool back then. So for those that actually do like nostalgic stuff or nostalgia heads, I guess if you call them that, they just want to go back and I mean, they actually do like things that happened back then. I mean, for those that mention it all the time, of course, are probably hipsters, and they think that they do it as a trend. But other than that, I mean, it's starting to become a fad thing. And I know I'm going back and forth here, but it's a fad to actually go back and like nostalgia stuff. But there are people like me that like to reminisce on how things were, especially with all these reboots that are popping up out of the woodwork from old 90s stuff and old 80s stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a trend now. But for those like me that like to reminisce, nothing wrong with that. But yeah, for those that bring it up all the time, they're just hipsters. That's just me. Your second question for me is, does Nature Girl 30 submit questions to other YouTubers' Q&A videos? Not lately. I will say this. The only individual that I have actually sent questions to, actually two people. I have sent questions to the British Fist, and I've also sent questions to the CC Network. I think I've sent questions to Freddie fairly recently, probably sometime in December. I haven't had a chance to watch his Q&A, plus I don't even know if he actually has it out yet. But yeah, those are the only two YouTubers that I've ever sent questions to. I've also sent questions to someone way back when. I used to send a lot of Q&A questions to people. But the only ones that I could really remember was the British Fist and the CC Network. Those are the ones I've sent. Those are the only ones I remember. I actually did send some questions on to one of the wrestling channels. I wish I could remember his name. I'm not sure if he's still doing them anymore. But yeah, that was a long time ago. And your last question for me is, thoughts on The Rock and Stone Cold from WrestleMania 17. The Rock versus Stone Cold versus WrestleMania 17. I will say, I'm actually trying to remember. Yeah, WrestleMania 17, The Rock versus Stone Cold. I think that was his last match before he officially left. That was actually a pretty bittersweet match with a very bittersweet ending, because no one really expected, especially me at the time. Because back then, you know, there really wasn't anything, there was no social media. We had absolutely no idea what was going to happen. We had no idea who was going to show up the next day. And it was a huge surprise not to see him ever again. And after he left, that's when the Attitude Era started to drop off. But I think that was his last one. Yeah, that was his last one, I think. But yeah, it was kind of bittersweet to actually see Stone Cold go, not knowing that he was going to come back. And it's kind of funny that without Stone Cold, the Attitude Era officially died. And all the changes started to happen. And it's just, yeah. It was a very bittersweet moment. Because part of me wasn't entirely sure if I was going to see him again. But then not seeing him ever again was just as bad. But yeah, it was pretty bittersweet. And my last set of Twitter questions actually comes from Edward. And your first set of questions is this. You are one unique woman. Thank you very much. How did you come up with the hashtag Nature Girl Q&A for Twitter? Okay. I got the inspiration from the British Fist, because when they actually were making videos frequently, the only way that Daniel will be able to separate whether a comment from a question for people who actually send questions on Twitter was the hashtag. They have hashtag British Fist or hashtag something. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. I didn't have a huge Twitter following back then, so I'm like, okay, well, why not make these Q&As kind of interesting? Instead of sending them to me via YouTube, why don't we just use Twitter? I have a Twitter account that I rarely use, so why don't I just use, Twitter with a part of my Q&A? So that's when I decided to invent the hashtag. For people who are actually sending me questions via YouTube, I actually tried to encourage them to send it to me Twitter, so it wouldn't get lost in the fold. That's what actually makes them, that actually makes it easier for me to separate the comments from the questions. So yeah, that's, British Fist was my inspiration to start the hashtag, and it hasn't completely caught on, but I do appreciate you using the hashtag. And now it actually became a part of my videos. I've done so many of them, so it's kind of like my last spiel before I end the entire show. So, well, the Q&A, of course. But yeah, that's how I came up with it. Your second question for me is, Mario is a classic. Have you ever played Super Mario Brothers 3 for Nintendo? Oh boy. I fell in love with Super Mario Brothers 3 when my parents went out one night and they left me at my neighbor's house, and my neighbor's son Jonathan got a new NES with Super Mario Brothers 3. He would always get the latest of the latest stuff, and this was like in the 80s, so of course it'd be the latest of the latest stuff. When he got Super Mario 3, I didn't stop playing. Literally, I played until my parents came to pick us up. They didn't get back till late. I got there during the day, but I got there on Friday. It was Saturday morning when I got finished playing. I got to level 7. I got to zone 7 before I had to quit. And the thing about this is that back in the day, around the 80s, we're spoiled now. When it comes to our Xbox Ones, our Xbox 360s, our PS4 3, 2, and 1, our N64s, our Dreamcasts, everything now, back then, everything from that point on, we were spoiled. Because in the N64 Genesis, well, not N64, but our original NES and Sega Genesis era, you did not, in any way, shape, or form, have the means to save anything. Any gameplay you ever had, any work you ever done on a level, it depends on you finishing, because you did not have a way to save it. So I knew how far I got in this game. If I quit now, I would never see the ending. And I literally played for 13 hours straight, and I came close to beating it. It was a challenge. Not to mention the fact there was absolutely no cheats. The internet was still fresh and new. Social media was non-existent. We had beepers back in the day. Pagers. That was the only way you were able to literally get a hold of someone. Cell phones were like those big blocky things, not the smartphones that we have now. So, it was really difficult to get cheats, and it was really impossible to save anything. So I was a diehard. I want to finish this game. But unfortunately I couldn't. My parents came to pick me up. I was on level 7, zone 7. I think that was Pipe World, before I was ever able to beat it, and it sucked. But my parents ended up getting us an NES a little later. We ended up getting Super Mario Brothers 3. I beat it several times. It took me about 2 weeks to beat it because my parents would let me play video games on the during the week, only on the weekends. And then my mom would pretty much never let us sit down. So even finding the time to play was impossible. But other than that, I actually did beat it. I enjoyed the game. I loved every bit of it. It was fun. It was a blast. Especially myself and my sister. It was 2 players, so we would always play video games together. It was awesome. It really was. I enjoyed every bit of it. And Thank you. All your videos that you're putting on YouTube are cool. You are leaving your legacy. I appreciate you saying that, Edward. You are amazing. Thank you so much for sending me your questions. And thank everyone for sending me your questions on Twitter. Now let's move on to the questions that I have via YouTube. My first set of questions actually comes from Dustin Nunn. Your question for me is this: have you ever played the Super Mario Brothers series? If so, who is your favorite Mario character? Another Mario question. Interesting. But okay. Like I said, Super Mario Brothers 3, of course, was my favorite. I believe it's one of the best Marios of all time, and nothing can touch it. That's just my opinion of it. My favorite character of that series definitely was the Koopa Kids. Like, I loved the Koopa Kids. They call them the Koopalings now, but around my day, we call them the Koopa Kids. And they actually did have, and I wish I had the actual box, the original box that went with it, because in that little pamphlet says that they were Bowser's kids. They made that clear. And I know that there's not only the theory was debunked when Shigeru Miyamoto pretty much kind of stomped that down, saying that they were minions instead of it being Koopa's kids. But I will actually leave the link to Andre Meadows, or known as the Black Nerd, or Black Nerd Comedy. I will leave that link of the Koopalings in the card above if you guys want to watch that. Because honestly, that's one of my favorite videos he's ever made. That's how I ended up subscribing to the guy, because I was laughing hysterically after that. But yeah, he will explain the entire theory behind what he calls the Koopalings. I call the Koopa Kids. He'll explain the entire theory. And yeah, you should definitely watch it. But yeah, it has to be the Koopa Kids by far. And especially Wendy. Wendy was my favorite Koopa Kid. She was the only Koopa female. So it was kind of cool to see a Koopa female villain. Because we don't even know what the Koopa Kids' mom actually looks like. We haven't even seen a female Koopa villain in a Mario series yet. So she was the closest. So for me, I'm like, yeah, I'm all about Wendy. But yeah, by far, Wendy O. Koopa, one of the Koopa Kids, and the Koopa Kids themselves are my favorite. Seriously, straight up. And I've talked too much about the Koopa Kids. But let's move on to Justin's side. Will Trump win and go on to face Hillary to become president? No. I'm going to be honest. There's so much there's so much going against Trump right now. And even though people say, oh, Trump is having a ton of momentum. Yes, he's getting the popular vote. I will admit that. But the Electoral College is the overall group that chooses the president. Nothing that we do chooses the president. It's them. And honestly, everyone in Congress is against Trump, because Trump will make a mockery of this country. They know it, and some of us know it. So it would be stupid if we actually do vote for the guy. But in the end, yes, the popular vote does count. But the Electoral College is the one that kind of sort of chooses the president. That's just my opinion. I could be right, wrong. Whoever knows politics, fine. Leave in the comments, correct me, whatever. But the Electoral College actually does have the overall vote. Who's going to be the president? I doubt it's going to be Trump. He has far too much against him. Hillary actually does have a lot of experience being in politics. Not only was her husband one of the presidents, but I will say that she has done a lot before she became the first lady of the White House. She actually has done a lot of work prior to that. And so has Bernie Sanders. But honestly, in my opinion, it's going to be between Bernie and Hillary. It really is. But I highly doubt that it's going to be Trump. I doubt that Trump is going to be our president. Have you heard that Eva Marie Hader committed suicide because he failed to rape her? I hope that's a joke. That's not a joke. That's really sad. It really, really is sad. No, I haven't heard, and that's just disturbing. My last set of questions comes from Final Limits. Does Taker look like his 2004 self with that long hair? Kinda. I'm kind of reminiscent, but I will say this. He has some locks on him. That's the one thing I remember about Taker. When he was part of the whole corporate ministry, well, that dude had the longest of long hair I have ever seen in my life. His hair was like rock star hair. Rock star raven black hair. But it was a lot thicker back then. It's kind of hard to tell whether or not his hair is thick now because it's always wet. But honestly, yeah, I guess it's somewhat reminiscent, but not as long. Thoughts on the fan who committed suicide because Daniel Bryan retired. Ooh. It really breaks my heart when some fans take it a little bit too seriously to the point of fanatic level. And I'm not in any way, shape, or form going to down the guy. But I will say it's a shame that he committed suicide over something he didn't have to commit suicide for. I don't want to psychoanalyze him or anything, but that's just sad. It really is a shame if that happened. The one thing I will say about Daniel Bryan is that Daniel Bryan, and from my memory and my experience as being a wrestling fan, I feel that he's the only wrestler that a lot of people cared about to where we wanted him to retire. We wanted him to take care of himself. We wanted him to be able to spend time with his wife and develop a family with her. We wanted nothing but good for him. And I haven't seen that in a very long time. I don't think I've ever seen that ever in wrestling history. My history that I remember. I don't remember any wrestler that anybody has cared about that much to where we wanted him to leave for his health and for his sanity. But it does break my heart to know that he did this for that reason. That he committed suicide for that reason. That breaks my heart. That really breaks my heart. Have you seen Fuller House yet? No, and I'm not sure if I really want to. Don't get me wrong. I love Full House back in the 80s. I remember when it being that it was a part of the TGIF 8 o'clock block on ABC back in the day. I remember that. And it was fun watching Full House. I had a good time watching Full House with my family. But I'm okay with not watching, I don't know what you call it, the prequel, the sequel, I don't know. I'm okay with not watching it, especially when you know that the Olsen twins have more money than any of those actors combined, and we know they're not going to step a foot on that set, so it's going to be a little bit awkward, in my opinion. I don't think anybody cares much for the old characters anymore. Bob Saget definitely... Seeing Bob Saget now makes me think differently of how he was then. I had no idea how raunchy he was until a little later. I had no idea back then. I thought he was like, oh, Danny Tanner, wholesome, sweet, and corny. But I never knew how he is now. And it's going to be difficult for me to look at him in that same light. Not saying he's a bad dude, but, you know, when that's kind of taken from you, you think of him a little differently. So, in other words, I'm kind of fine with not watching it. I'm alright. But a lot of people are going to watch it for, not so much DJ, but Stephanie. A lot of people want to watch it for Stephanie Tanner. Because Stephanie Tanner, she looks a lot different than she did when she was little. I'll tell you that. But other than that, no. I think I'm okay with not watching it. Plus, I don't think I have Netflix. So, I can't really watch it anyway. Are you voting for Trump, Hillary, or Bernie Sanders? I am definitely not voting for Trump. I will tell you that in a heartbeat. It's a mess. This whole vote, it's a mess. This entire presidential race is a complete train wreck. And I definitely do not want a train wreck to be my president. Seriously. Have you ever gotten into an argument with someone on traffic? On traffic? No. In traffic? Kinda. I've gotten into arguments with people inside of a car because back in my mid-20s, I will say that I was a bit of, like, moving on up to like my mid-20s, mid to late 20s, I was a bit of a hothead. So, yeah, there wasn't a time that anything could set me off. But yeah, I have gotten into arguments with people in traffic, and especially on traffic, no. But in traffic, in a car, yes. I haven't really got out of the car and screamed at anybody, but I have gotten into arguments before. In traffic, in a car. But I'm not really so much like that anymore. I'm kind of mellowed out now. But anyway, guys, those are all of my questions. I thank you so much for sending me questions. And if you want to send me more, by all means, send it to me via YouTube or on Twitter at RKH30, hashtag NatureGirlQ&A. It's NatureGirl30 signing off. Peace out, guys.